My name is Ingegard Kostenrazi, and this is part 10 of Inga Reads the Marshal's Guide from July 2020. In this section, I will cover pages 37 through 39, covering the guidelines for marshaling on the field. Again, as always, if you have any questions, comments, complaints, or concerns, feel free to direct them to me regarding this recording. If your questions or concerns are regarding the rules themselves, please check with your most up-to-date Marshal's Guide as well as your local marshals for more information. So with Roman numeral 14 on page 37, I'll begin with guidelines for marshaling on the field. The guidelines outlined in this section are not rigid requirements, but are placed here in an attempt to clarify and to provide examples of acceptable methods and procedures. A. Preparing to marshal combat activities. As Marshal in Charge, also known as MIC, you are responsible for organizing the marshaling. This does not mean that you have to do it all yourself. Things that need to be done prior to all combat activities include 1. Check that the field can be safely fought upon, preferably before the site is reserved for the event. Can someone in armor with restricted vision cross it safely? For example, without injury, simple tripping is an inherent hazard of combat in rough terrain. At minimum, check at the beginning of the day to see if there are holes, soft spots, rocks, etc. If they are serious and cannot be worked around, move the fighting somewhere else. 2. Arrange for equipment inspection. See equipment inspection guidelines below. 3. Arrange for marshals for all of the combat. That means an absolute minimum of one marshal per single combat, preferably 2 or 3. Enough marshals for group combat, melees, and war battles to both surround the fighting, to keep an eye on the boundaries, and keep most of the fights under general surveillance for detached armor, broken weapons, etc. It is relatively common for a marshal in charge to draft anyone he or she feels is competent to serve as field marshals during an event. Whether these individuals are warranted marshals is a matter of kingdom choice. The advantage of being a warranted marshal is that you are an official of the corporation, which gives you certain legal protection from lawsuits, if any, arising from your actions as a marshal. Since the society and its officers have never faced a lawsuit over fighting on the field, this may not seem critical, but it is worth thinking about. If volunteers are in short supply, point out to the fighters that they do not get to start until sufficient marshals are available. 4. When it is all over, write up a report on the event. See the paperwork section under Roman numeral 7, Chain of Command. B. Marshaling single combat. B1. At minimum, there should be one marshal for single combat. 2 or 3 will be able to see more of the fight. 4 or more will get in each other's way and block the view from the sidelines without providing noticeably better marshaling. B2. As noted earlier, marshaling has 3 parts of nearly equal importance: safety, fair witness, and showmanship. Excessive concern for any of these to the neglect of the other 2 will make fighting less enjoyable for all concerned. While these concerns apply to all marshaling, they are most detailed and balanced in single combat. B3. Safety. 3A. The field itself can cause safety problems. Before you begin, look over the area where the fighting will take place. Look particularly for large holes, soft spots, and rocks. The fighters will generally accept small holes, rocks, etc. as part of the terrain. Once the fight starts, try to keep it away from these areas. If the hazards are serious, move the fight. As the fighters come onto the field, take a quick look to see if they have their full armor, especially elbow, neck, and hand armor. These are the likeliest to be removed and then forgotten. This should not take any time at all. It is neither a full inspection nor an attempt to catch someone trying to play silly games with the rules. Just a quick double check to help someone who may have been distracted by the excitement of the day. B. Once the fight has started, Watch particularly for broken armor, lost tempers, injuries, and unauthorized people, pets, objects on the field. Outsiders, especially small children and pets, do not always realize that they are supposed to stay off the field during combat. If there is a problem, shout "Hold" several times if necessary. Most fighters will hear and respond to a cry of "Hold," even when they won't notice their own name being called. If the first cry of "Hold" does not cause the fighters to stop, get in between the fighters or between the fighters and whoever or whatever has wandered onto the field and block the weapons with your staff until the fighting stops. Keep yelling "Hold" while you do so, that eventually they may notice. That is one reason why marshals routinely carry staffs on the field. D. Bear in mind that the various kingdoms have somewhat differing traditions as to how much marshals should intrude into a fight. On one extreme, some kingdoms expect marshals to keep their opinions to themselves, except in the case of clear and immediate safety hazards. At the other extreme, some kingdoms expect marshals to volunteer advice anytime they think the fighters might possibly have a question about a blow. If you are new to marshaling or merely new to the kingdom you are in, try to find out where in this spectrum your kingdom lies. It will make a difference in how you act, and, perhaps more importantly, it will make a major difference in what the fighters expect of you. Blatant violations of the rules and safety concerns should always be brought up either immediately if necessary for safety issues or as there is a hold called for rules discussions that can wait until then. 4. Witness. 4a. You are expected to be an impartial witness to exactly what happens during a fight. Ideally, you should be able to describe the last 3 to 4 blows on your side of the fight, where they started, their angle of approach, how they were blocked, or where they landed. Do not be afraid to say, "I don't know," if you were looking at one part of the fight when something allegedly happened in another part. 4b. Do not try to impose your view unless you see what appears to be a major and repeated problems. Leave the blow counting to the participants unless you see clear reason to intervene. Usually, they have a much clearer perspective than the marshals do. 4c. If the fighters do ask you what happened, or you feel compelled to volunteer, try to do so tactfully, prefacing your statements with, "It looked to me like," "It appeared," or "To the crowd it looked like," is preferable to a dogmatic assertion of what happened. Similarly, it is preferable to ask, "Was that dent in your helm before?" rather than saying, "That blow put a 6-inch dent in the side of your helm." The later may be 100% accurate, but it is unnecessarily antagonistic to someone who may honestly have thought the blow too light. 5. How to observe combat. 5a. In order to be able to answer as accurately as possible, you need as clear a view as possible. This means being close to the fight. You need to strike a balance between getting closer to see better and staying back out of the range of the blows. Just what the appropriate distance is for you will depend on your level of experience with fighting. For example, how well you can judge what the range of the weapons is and whether you are in or near it. In general, for single combat, 20 yards is too far and 2 yards is too close. In the absence of a better idea, consider 5 yards for weapons less than 3 feet in length and 8 yards if either combatant has a longer weapon. Try to keep moving so that the combatants are roughly centered between you and the other marshal for the fight. 6. Showmanship. Keep an eye on the audience. SCA combat is a spectator sport, just as medieval tournaments were. Your part of the show is to keep things moving and avoid blocking the view from the sidelines except where unavoidable. This means fast pre-fight checks and announcements, a minimum of holds and discussions during the fight, and a strenuous effort to stay out of the way and keep moving. If it's cold, wear several layers of clothing and move even more. One person in a cloak can interfere with the view of many. C. Marshalling melees. When marshalling a melee, the witness function is necessarily relegated to a very low priority. It is not unimportant, but it is impossible for a handful of marshals to be accurate witnesses to the details of a couple dozen separate combats. 2. You should have a minimum of 3 marshals for the first 20 fighters, plus 1 additional marshal for each 15 fighters up to a total of 500 fighters and 35 marshals. If you have more than 500 fighters, realistically, even if you have more than 50 fighters, you should have an experienced marshal in charge and a sizable number of experienced marshals. It is preferable to have more marshals for free-for-all melees. 3. Marshals should station themselves around the edges of the fight. This allows them to control the borders while keeping as much of the fighting as possible in view. It also prevents fighters from running into them from behind. As always, keep moving and stay close enough to spot safety problems. 4. In very large melees, it may be desirable to have some marshals in the middle of the field, in addition to those around the edge. If you are midfield, be careful that you do not get so interested in the fight in front of you that you back into or forget to watch another bout moving around behind you. And that concludes this section of Part 10, Guidelines for Marshalling on the Field. We will continue with Part 11, which will begin with Roman numeral 15, Combat Authorization Procedures. And again, as always, if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to me regarding this recording. Any concerns or questions regarding the rules themselves, please again contact your Kingdom's Guide and your most up-to-date Marshal's Handbook, as well as any of your local marshals. I hope you've enjoyed this reading, and you have a great day.